Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you so much for coming to Daily Cyber episode number 273. I'd like to thank you guys for watching the episodes and the great feedback that you guys have been giving me. If there's any experts that you would like me to interview, please let me know. Send me an email, send a comment. Let us know if there's an expert you'd like to hear from and want us to interview and just kind of go through what's going on in the cybersecurity world. I'm really excited about today's episode. Someone I worked with at a previous company. I know he's an expert in many areas of cybersecurity. Afghani, who is a senior director of research and threat intelligence at Cypher, focused on leading a global team in the US, Latin America, Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and Asia, related to emerging trends and best practices to counter the impacts of ransomware. Afghani has more than 25 years of professional experience in application development, IT security, cybersecurity investigation, computer forensics, cryptocurrency, blockchain technology, and cyber threat intelligence analysis fusion in both federal and private sector. I've worked with Afghani for many years and saw his level of expertise being in an organization as well as we went to a client site. So there's a lot we're going to be covering today and talking about. So grab a coffee, grab a tea, and let's hack at it. How's it going, Afghani?
Hey, Brandon, thank you very much for having me. Hey guys, and thank you for joining this stream. I was telling, Brandon and I chatted before this call started. I was telling him, once I grow up, I want to have a background just like Brandon has, like all the hackers. I think Brandon.
That's what I need. I need that hoodie and I need the bright keyboard under here, right?
Right, yeah, because we moved to a new house in June, and my office still looks like a disaster. You actually can see foot lockers that I haven't opened since my last deployment with the Army in 2012. So it's still work in progress.
That's awesome. I mean, you've been fairly busy. I've been watching you online. You're doing a lot of talks and presentations. Tell me, what's going on in the industry? What's going on in cybersecurity that you're seeing?
Yeah, it's there's a lot of things to unpack in this question. So if we would focus on a week ago, I presented DEF CON, and based on my assessment, I would say 40 to 50% of talks were talking about threats from artificial intelligence, deepfakes, and it's that threat and risk is already here. So we definitely see threat actors using AI and deepfakes to facilitate phishing attacks, some team calls, fake team calls, etc., with videos, and it's very realistic and very believable. So I think from that perspective, that's probably number one risk right now that we are facing, because with implementation of AI and use it by threat actors, it significantly reduces the barrier to entry into the dark side.
Right. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that are going on with deep fakes. I mean, what are you seeing on the type of attacks, right? When you're seeing the deep fake attacks?
I think the first case that was very extremely interesting, it was Hong Kong or Singapore, where an accountant from there thought that he's on a call with his bosses from UK. But everything was staged and everything was deepfake videos. And in cases like that, it's absolutely believable that the guy would go with it and approve the wire transfer. So from that perspective, it's definitely extremely believable and extremely dangerous. And obviously, with phishing attacks, before, you can pretty much spot, there's a grammar mistakes in a phishing email, but now you can use AI to actually do analysis on how you write, what typical language you use in your previous emails, and they can take the business email compromise attacks to the next level, where it will be absolutely believable.
So now, are you seeing that people like, and let me ask it in a different way, how are they collecting this information? Like, I mean, we're talking about CEOs, we're talking about, you know, people of privileged access in the organization, be accounts payable, accounts receivable. How are they collecting this information?
So I'm still trying to figure out a new term for that. Like so far, I call it precise phishing, but we definitely see more attacks where the initial compromise is not the victim. So it's some type of like vendor or the third party partner of the company that gets breached. Then attackers collect all the information they can from those systems. And then they do like data mining, trying to do analysis on patterns, like you mentioned accounts payable. They can figure out, okay, like those accounts are being paid on, I don't know, like 20th of every other month. They can figure it all out, and they can craft a message that will be very timely. So like that would be something that a partner would expect to receive at that time. And at the same time, they like cater the language as well. So like the whole phishing attack, like I think we can find a better word, but like for now, I will just call it precise phishing because they like use they leverage information and data from like other compromise, and they cater the attack to make it more believable.
Now, are you seeing them leveraging publicly accessible information? I mean social media. Like, for example, like myself, like I'm on a lot of videos, you know, pulling that content, my tone, my verbiage, my language, my face, right, to pull that down and then be able to edit in a digital audio interface or even like AI tool would be a lot easier because the content's there.
No, I think it's next level. So it's information that you cannot find in open sources like your social media, because like to make me look like you, like would be a no-brainer. I can do it in 2 weeks, and we can publish a new DailyCyber, like where I would host it instead of you. But the actual leverage, like more proprietary or sensitive information. So, for example, we've seen a case where it was a phishing attack on banks where attacker got the information like passport like scans from another vendor, third party, and they would reach out to clients of that bank, and they would say like, okay, like this is the passport that we have on file. Please confirm your account information, login password, etc. And obviously, like, well, my passport is not on the social media. I hope yours is not either. But like with that type of access to information that you cannot get from open sources, it definitely is way more dangerous on how successful those attacks are.
I mean, and again, like you and I have both worked with organizations that have gone through compromises, be it, you know, be it this email compromise, ransomware event, network intrusion, or any combination of the three, right? And that data can be out on the dark web, right? And I mean, the sad part is, I mean, being an incident response lead, when you go through the negotiation and they tell you that, you know, proof of deletion, you don't really know if they delete the data or if they post it somewhere else.
No, absolutely. And just to go back to the previous topic, it's scary how good artificial intelligence is. So I'm currently working with a couple partners with Gallagher and the Future Point of View on a presentation. So even obviously by my accent, you can tell that I was not born in Toronto. But it's scary because we work on a presentation. We basically used my voice and my video, and we flipped it, and even accent disappears. And we ran it through several tests where for law enforcement. So like if they would try to check, okay, is that voice recording authentic, comparing to a sample from the original person. And even with my accent being the source of the voice, initial voice, all those models say yeah, it's like 99.9% it's accurate. It's crazy.
Wow. So you're seeing more and more attacks of this kind of attack vector or methodology?
No, I think the general trend that we see that I highly doubt that we'll see like what we've seen in the past, like for phishing attacks, which would be like a spray and pray. So like it would be just like mass email campaign, like with questionable language, some error mistakes, grammar mistakes in there. So now we definitely see groups definitely leveraging like artificial intelligence, both for phishing, which will be like lower sophistication level of attack, to a point where they can leverage information from other sources, third parties, and at the same time may use like deep fakes for Teams calls or other calls as well.
I think one of the things that I'm seeing is that the quality of the phishing campaigns are now becoming better. Like you said, like you're not seeing the grammar mistakes, you're not seeing the spelling error, you're not seeing the difference in the tone in the email. It's saying Mr. at the bottom, but Mrs. at the bottom, right? It's not saying, one name or another. Like things that you kind of go through phishing training and you catch, right? Because the signature is different from the actual first introduction, right? It's not the same name, or the email address is not the same name as the signature. But a lot of those things are starting to, if they start using AI, and what I'm seeing is cleaned up. And now you have to be very diligent. Like, am I actually looking to receive this email? Is it something that, like, and I'll use, for example, accounts payable, accounts receivable. Am I looking to get an invoice from this client, right, or vendor or partner? If not, hold on, what do I need to do? Get on the phone, call them directly and say, hey, did you send me this invoice? Versus clicking on the PDF or the document or Excel spreadsheet or whatever that may be and going through that process.
Yeah, absolutely. And even then, if you think that you should receive that invoice on that day, I still would recommend make sure you have an alternate way to communicate with your partners, with your clients, etc., and double check before you divert, update any like bank information or wire information, etc. Because as you, Brandon, said, right now, it's really hard to detect phishing email just by looking at it.
Well, I think and something to everyone that's listening, if someone requests a change in their banking information, have separation of duties, someone else checks it, and then have a validation confirmation process that you actually have in your history, not in the email signature, which I've seen people do and call the threat actor directly, and they're like, they validate it and then they transfer it. Call that's in your CRM or your previous, contact information, that company, that individual, and say, hey, did you just send a request to change your account information? Is that valid? And then go through that process. Because I've seen organizations, I've worked with them, where they said, look, I called them. It was the number in the signature. How am I supposed to know, right? It sounded like them, they said, yeah, it was an authorization. Something happened with their bank, so they need to transfer to this new account information. So I changed and I sent it. And the way they found out was the vendor called them because the company was in arrears, like 3 months of payments. And they're like, we paid you. They're like, no, you didn't.
Hey, Brandon, I actually have a funny story, and I think so in former life I was a special agent on a cybercrime task force with FBI, and I think one of my former colleagues is on the stream as well, Jared Baref. So if you so at that point I got a tip that 18 different banks and credit unions were compromised in the United States. So my job was to reach out to each bank and tell them, okay, guys, you have an issue, and try to imagine the situation. You're a bank executive. I'm calling you, and the guy with heavy Russian accent tells you, you have an issue, we need to help you. So after a couple banks where basically CEOs were telling me, dude, what do you want? It's a fraud, whatever. I changed the script. So essentially I would tell them, okay, guys, so I know it sounds extremely fishy. Just go out, Google FDIC, call the main hotline. This is my name, Special Agent Evgeny Erchov. Just tell them to connect you with me, and we'll continue the conversation. Because on the first two, 3 calls, it was absolutely miserable. And I only can imagine what it's like for bad guys, that actually using their real voice and trying to convince somebody that something is wrong with their bank account number or transfer or whatever. But it was painful.
Well, I think the one thing that, and I had a colleague on the last stream, we were talking about the psychology, but some of the times, as you know, is they get them in a fear state, so they're not connecting to the reality. Hold on, why is a Russian guy calling me about my bank account, right? oh, it's a law enforcement. You're going to have a subpoena. We're going to subpoena your house, your car, your kids. We're going to come out. We're going to seize everything. If you don't pay this $5,000 by end of day today, give me your credit card. And like they scare people and they're not thinking, and they kind of go, oh crap, here's my credit card number. And then they pay, and then they get off the phone and they go, hold on, was that real? And then they go through the process after the fact, right? And that's where we were talking last stream, is I think there's also the challenge of the individual, the human element of being in a fear state.
No, absolutely, yeah. And psychology piece is there, absolutely, because if you think you're getting a threat from like police force or law enforcement or even IRS, like that tax as well. In Canada, you don't have IRS, you have something else. But so for US, it will be like IRS that deal with taxes. If you get threats on a call, on the voicemail or email, obviously like you may get like into like state of a little bit of panicking and not thinking clearly. But you have to step back. You have to find the source, like how you actually can validate like whatever you receive. Make sure like you don't send Roblox gift cards to your CEO that requested them because he's in the meeting. So
I had a client that called me in, said, okay, we had a security incident. We need to talk to you about this. I'm like, okay. All right, what happened? I'm thinking network intrusion, ransomware event, like something big. And they're like, our accounts payable person, our junior accounts payable, she went to Best Buy and bought $1,000 worth of gift cards to pay a client. I'm like, what? What do you mean she bought $1,000 of gift cards to pay a client? Well, the client said they called her and said they needed the payment. The best way and the only way to do it, because their bank was down, was to do it through these gift cards. I'm like, you stopped those, right? Well, no, we have the $1,000 of gift cards here in my office. What are we supposed to do?
Yeah, and on that front, like with those type of scams, I think we actually getting better, because like I do see a lot of posters like around like the gift card ATM machine, like in grocery stores, and we also have like few Bitcoin ATMs where you can actually purchase Bitcoins for cash, and there's like huge poster around it. Okay, like if you saying like, okay, like if you've been asked to send money using like Bitcoin transaction, like please like pause, think, and call the local police just to make sure it's safe.
Now, talking about law enforcement, because you've had that background, how are you seeing things change over the years and what you're doing right now?
Oh my God, it's definitely night and change because before the cyber crime is international crime. So like you have to deal usually like with various different countries, jurisdictions, and the process before was absolutely painful. So for example, like if I would suspect that some server, let's say Belgium, had the information that I would need, and I'm in US. So in order for me to get information from that server, I would have to convince my USA attorney first that it's a good idea. Then like we'll have to run it by grand jury. Then Department of Justice would sign off on that. They would pass it to Department of State. Department of State would pass it to the embassy of the country in DC, like in Washington, and then like it goes to their version of Department of State and their law enforcement, and then like eventually trickles down. So by the time I would get, if I would get some data, it may take like 2 or 3 months. So back then it was absolutely miserable. Now it's definitely a different world because like we have joint task forces where we have partners from different countries. Some of them are deployed like in US, and they sit in the joint task force here. At the same time, like UK and NCA and CCU, Europol, like we have liaison officers everywhere. So like potentially to get data, or at least like freeze preserve data, it can be done in hours versus weeks before. So I think we're definitely getting into a much better state, like when it comes to chasing cyber criminals and finding out who's doing what.
Now, with that being said, I know one of the challenge is that if a threat actor was overseas, there's really nothing you could do. Like that was kind of the story, right? It's that if an organization in the US or Canada got compromised, there's really nothing to do. You got a choice. You can restore from your backup, knock on wood, a backup works, or you had to pay the threat actor, right? Now, depending on the state, some states say, yeah, you can't pay it at all. New York, right? you can't pay a threat actor. Either one, you restore, or you rebuild the data, but you can't pay. Now, I know that was the previous story. Has that changed?
Yeah. Absolutely. So and a good segue to Ukraine, Russia. So it definitely was like that to some extent with Ukraine and Russia. So essentially, Russia and Ukraine were like safe havens for cyber criminals. So as long as you don't target any organizations within Russia and you pay your cut to a local friendly federal agent, you can get away pretty much with anything. Everything changed over the course of the last 3 years since the war started. So once the war started, I call it the Great Migration in three waves. So the first wave started like when the war started, because like our theory was, okay, like if you are kind of like a cyber criminal that live like in Ukraine or Russia, you definitely don't want to deal with that. You probably would just like, you're wealthy, you can take your family, pick up and leave and go wherever you want. The interesting consequences of that was that they like in great numbers that did leave, and they went to locations that were more friendly to U.S. law enforcement. I think the first case of arrest that was made public was a guy from Ukraine that operated Raccoon Locker. So he literally, like 3 days after the war started, he jumped into his Porsche with his wife and drove over to Europe. And then his wife took an Instagram picture from Amsterdam, and 2 weeks later he was picked up. I guess moral of the story there, like if you're a cyber criminal, just take away phone from your spouse, because it's not going to end well. But since then, like we've seen, at least what's publicly known, like over 30 like high-profile cyber criminals that were picked up all over Europe, Thailand, Asia, Turkey, etc. And some of them were indicted by Department of Justice since like 2014. So I don't know like what they were thinking, but they made a bad choice by leaving the safe haven. But what's interesting, so like essentially, so once the war started, the initial wave of cyber criminals went out. Like a lot of them went to the local countries, so it will be like Georgia, Turkey, Thailand, Vietnam, etc. Then Russia announced partial mobilization. So, like for example, Brandon, if you assume under 55, so like if you would be a Russian citizen, like potentially you can be drafted and be sent to war, like to fight for it. So obviously it was like another mass exodus of cyber criminals from Russia. And then something extremely unpredictable happened at the end of the last year. So there were several law enforcement operations that targeted cyber criminals inside of Russia that didn't touch like Russian organizations as well. There was like the guy in Kaliningrad that was like on DOJ most wanted list. He was picked up. The guy that operated a Russian version of Alpha Bay, so it was Hydra market, so like you could pretty much like buy anything you want, like drugs, serial killer, or whatever. So he got a life sentence in prison. I'm sure you remember Sodino Kibi are evil guys. So before the Ukraine-Russia war started, they were picked up literally like a month before. So their trial had been going on for over 2 years. They got real sentences. So like they got like 6 to 8 years in prison. Okay. And that kind of like sent the second like wave of folks from cyber criminal operations like leaving both Russia and Ukraine as well.
I got a question from the community. What have you learned that works due to the war on the cyber warfare? Also, what are you guys doing to harden your systems? So we'll start with the first one. So like from the warfare, what have you learned? What's some of your takeaways?
I think I can talk about that subject probably for a couple hours to begin with, but because it's like in former life, I also served as a U.S. Army Cyber Threat Intel officer, supporting one of the 3-letter agencies in DC. So like I tracked and did analysis on cyber warfare capabilities and how they evolved over the years, from 2007 in Estonia, then 2008 Georgia, then Crimea annexation, 2014, then the full-blown invasion. We definitely see that the capabilities evolve. But the interesting part is that, like on the cyber front, yeah, like the state-sponsored sectors are pretty much the same, but they like evolve techniques, etc. But since Estonia, Russia actually used crowdsourcing to get help from cyber criminal community. And I think by that law enforcement operation at the end of the last year, they kind of shot themselves in the foot, because like if or when they will try to do something similar again, like I hope that there are not many like cyber criminals actually left to crowdsource from like in the Russian pool at the time.
So crowdsourcing is kind of one of the newer methodologies. Anything else you've kind of taken away from? Are they using different types of attack methodologies, different solutions?
We kind of seen between the Crimea annexation and the full-blown invasion in Ukraine. So like the major differences that we already touched on was use of artificial intelligence for information operations, for disinformation essentially. So like they produced a bunch of videos of President Zelensky allegedly delivering message to his troop that, hey, like guys, like we lost, just like lay down your weapons and surrender. But I think the most interesting development was that during the Crimea annexation, we did see that Russian cyber operations tried to jam some of the satellite communications. But during the full-blown invasion in Ukraine, they successfully were able to compromise Starlink and I think it was VSAT. And so VSAT, like, was pretty straightforward. So essentially, they found the infrastructure in Germany, they compromised the infrastructure, and that's how they were able to start controlling the VSAT communication. Starlink compromise was extremely smart, and you got to give it to an enemy. Like when they come up with something smart, like it was smart. So essentially, what they did, it was Russian troops would take over some of the Ukrainian positions. And they would pick up all the Android devices that were left by Ukrainian troops that control the Starlink systems. So then they would take them back. They would put malware on them. Then they would leave them again, and they would retreat. So Ukrainian troops would pick them up and start using them. And after that, the malware on those devices would take over the control and provide information to their operators. So it's just like it's genius.
No, that makes sense. Now, from what you've learned, like what are some things people can do to harden their systems now?
I mean, like I'm sure you have the same experience. Like when we get all the clients, the majority of the stuff that we deal with, there's a saying in Russian, like in order to survive, you just have to be faster than an average bear. And I think that's true, like in our community. Like if you follow the standard procedures, like implement MFA, make sure you have backups that are not connected to your network, like segregate accounts, admins versus like general users, do all the basic, like I don't know, top 5, top 10. When cyber criminals trying to attack you, unless it's extremely precise and targeted, like if they will take a look at your environment from the outside and basically say like there's too much work, they will move on to an easier target. But I mean, there's definitely no silver bullet in that community, because I mean, like every week we see, okay, like there's a new 0 day, and it's always like a perimeter devices, and they just like take in turns. I'm not gonna name the names, but essentially maybe 3, 4 just go one after another on the news cycle. I mean, like, there's definitely not such thing as a bulletproof solution, but I would say the best thing you can do, which would be pretty inexpensive, is to make sure you have backups. Even as stupid and simple as like having a hard drive that you like put all your backups, or hard drives that you put all the backups on once a week and put them in a safe. Disconnect, put them in a safe. It's definitely it cannot be compromised because it's physically unsafe, etc. But like. Like you need to have some separation and make sure you actually test it, you do the tabletop exercises, and that's where your services, Brandon, and ours can come in handy because we can like build the realistic scenarios. And yeah, and we had a funny story. So like we had a client, the compromise was like in intrusion vector was absolutely simple, but they haven't updated their backup systems for years. So they actually still had all tape backup solution.
Okay.
And funny, like you cannot encrypt tapes. So like it took some time, but even like with the old solution like that cannot be encrypted, like we were able to recover that as well.
I think to add on to it, I mean, you're looking at like administrative controls, training the team, like you talked about phishing campaigns and that. I mean, making sure your team's trained and up to date and alert of what they're doing. But also like defense and depth, like having one control, like, okay, we've hardened our firewalls are good. Or we have Sentinel-1 or CrowdStrike, the endpoint protection. Now we're good. To me, it's a defense in depth. It's a layered approach because one of those might fail. I mean, if it does, you want to have a secondary alerting, detecting, responding tool that if they get through once, something else is going to flag, alert, or stop. So then at least the impact is minimal. It's lower versus them, and you and I have dealt with this, where they're in the environment for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, threat actors doing reconnaissance, exfiltrating data, right? They've been in there, and on their way out, they encrypt the environment, right? And they're like, well, how long have they been in there? You have the forensics. They're like, well, they got back in January. Like January, oh my God, like, you know, it's July, like how, or August right now. How'd they get in from there? Well, they got in through a phishing campaign. No one detected it. They got access to that account. They sent another email through. They got access to a privileged account, and then no one was, monitoring that. And then all of a sudden they were in, and no one had geolocation or geo-blocking. They were coming in from Russia, whatever, and they were just transferring data, small segments, so it wasn't flagging anything. And then all of a sudden, on their way out, they encrypted the environment. So I think they're like DLP, solutions. I think we're looking at your firewall, making sure it's tuned, your SIM, right? Making sure you have a SOC that's monitoring 24/7, like all these things that you're tuning and constantly working with your team. And then, like you said, tabletop, testing it. Like until you feel comfortable that the solutions are working ongoing, going through a tabletop exercise monthly, then quarterly, and then maybe, every 6 months to now test and make sure. Because the worst thing I ever saw was a client goes, oh, our backups, our MSP, they've got our backups at work, and they have the protocol and they've done. The MSP goes, we haven't been doing your backups. They're like, what do you mean? Hold on, aren't we paying you for backups? No, you guys are not paying for back. We sent a statement of work, but you said no, it was too expensive. And they kind of get stuck. But having a tabletop exercise, going through and reviewing that, would have caught that earlier.
No, Brian, I completely agree on the layer solution. It actually just gave me a cool idea because, definitely, like you cannot rely on one line of defense. Like you have to have like several different mechanisms, platform systems in place. But like typically, like what we see is that usually the first thing ransomware groups are searching for cybersecurity policy. For the God of love, for the love of God, please do not save electronic version of your cybersecurity policy document somewhere electronically on your server. But at the same time, I think like if you'll create a fake version of cybersecurity policy, insurance policy, and put it and just like watch that file, because like once they get in, it probably would be one of the first file that we will search. Like once they actually touch it, like we can do another. But other than that, yes, like 100% agree on the layered solution and like actually doing tabletops to make sure that the process works and you're familiar with it. Another thing is that like make sure you actually have a printed copy of your incident response plan, because I'm sure Brian, you had cases like where we would walk in and was asked like, okay, like guys, like do you actually have an incident response plan? I said like, yeah, we do. Like, can we have it? Oh, it's encrypted with the rest of the files on the server. So like, it's like not very helpful. At minimum, have like a refrigerator magnet that you can put like with a number of your favorite breach coach, insurance provider, policy number. And if you'll need any external IT support, their numbers.
Oh, 100%. And it's funny because you bring that up and then they go through they go through the incident response and refer back to disaster recovery, and it's all outdated. Well, they've migrated the system. It's no longer on-prem. It's in cloud. It's the, so you're like, well, guys, we have to kind of go through this, and they're stuck in the, and I think this is the challenge where I see is they're stuck in the water right now because they're trying to figure out how to fix the solution, their technology, versus just actually going through the restoration. Now they're trying to figure it out, like, okay, it's in Azure, but it's now encrypted, but I can't get the backups because the backup's over here, but I don't know if they really have viable backups because we haven't been testing it. And now it creates more challenges. And I think something you and I have dealt with is the harder part of going through an instant response with clients is when they have to do that, because it makes the instance so much longer, and they're doing 72 hours to sometimes like a week to 2 week sprint where they're up like 12 to 20 hours a day. And to have to deal with that, if you're more proactive and got that in place, it helps. And I had an automotive company reach out to me who had an incident. They went through training with us at our previous company. They went through it. We went through it. We did a tabletop exercise, and then they had an incident after. The incident was only, and if I remember, it was only 2 hours from start to finish. They found it, they detected, they responded, they contained it. They went through, they were following their incident response plan. They went through their debriefing and remediation after. They plugged the holes and said within about 2 hours, they were done. They said, if we didn't have that in place, it could have been a much longer, and we would have been running around, questioning everyone. But we knew who to call, who to respond, what to do, how it was all laid out, and then it made sense. And then he said, now we made some modifications, but it helped us to be prepared to be able to deal with it.
Absolutely agree. And I'm big fan of tabletops because it exposes a lot of challenges like within the environment, even some things that the upper management may not realize. So, for example, like we had a company that was encrypted. They did have a IR plan, etc. But they were making like $3 million a day. And like once they realized, okay, like even if we follow their IR plan that they had in place, like it would take us like several days to restore everything from backups. The CEO basically said, like, no, like I cannot afford that. Like, don't do any negotiation, just pay what they want and let's move forward, because it was more expensive for that. And there are like a lot of different aspects and that we can bring up during the tabletops to make things more realistic.
100%. I mean, the thing that you and I have dealt with is we can give them real situations where they're like, yeah, but this won't happen. It's like, no, this was one of our clients that went through this. We, of course, redacted it, but we got you the same scenario. What happened? Same attack vector. What happened? How they got in, the scenario they went through, how they dealt with counsel carrier, right? Your MDR team, all that was in place. And that's the process they went through. And they're like, oh, so that's exactly what we'd be dealing with? 100%. That's exactly what you did. That's a real live incident. That's what happened to a client similar to your environment, your industry, your size, whatever that may be. And you get them to kind of go, oh, okay, so we have to do these checks and balances. Senior leadership has to be more engaged. And they start to really look at it versus you wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning, you have a ransomware note on your desktop. What do? Right? So
absolutely, yeah, 100% agree. And it should not be just an IT or CISO exercise. Like the key importance is to make sure that all the executives are involved in tabletops and they have at least a clear way to communicate. If your email is out, if your Teams is out, Slack, whatever you're using, like do you know who to call? Like, do you have a number? Do you have maybe like a Signal or Telegram as an alternative way to communicate?
Right. Now, one of the questions I had for you, and I know kind of the evolution of technology, I wanted to ask you, like, what's going on with the blockchain? I know we were talking before about blockchain analysis and kind of going through that.
There are definitely several things going on, but like the good thing about the blockchain is that everything stays on the record. It's not like something that you can try to do, like hide some transactions, and it will not ever be discovered. And that's actually like teaching back the book Traces in the Dark. Like, Brandon, if you haven't read it, please do. And then you can buy Jared and I a couple of beers, and we'll tell you some stories that didn't make it to the book. They were hilarious. But I mean, like, blockchain, the whole hour is that okay, like it's all anonymous transactions, but that's not true. You can trace everything, and with some of the algorithms, even if you like use, let's say, like some of the mixer tumbler, if you convert one currency like cryptocurrency to another, with a high statistical probability, it's possible to detect like where actually send it. So there's a way to even like cross blockchain to trace those transactions and find who out. And the bad guys are humans. You only need to make one mistake. There was a case where a couple of guys in New York were arrested, and they only made one mistake by paying for something stupid like $5-10 that was connected to the whole scheme of money laundering that they've been doing in the past, and they end up in jail. And again, like with blockchain, everything stays on the chain. So even years after the fact, you can be found like if you did something illegal and be liable.
So then why is it the case, and I'm going to be devil's advocate because I know most companies think this, why do I have to pay threat actors and not work with the law enforcement agency and do some sort of sting to get that threat actor? Because I mean, I remember one client I worked with he was adamant, let's get FBI here, let's get everyone in here, let's arrest these guys, like screw that. If you want me to put $100,000 up and you guys can trace it, let's do it. And the comment was at that time was there's nothing we can do. It sounds like now there might be possibilities.
The possibilities were there for quite some time, and actually there's a like separate interception task force at the FBI New York office. The challenge, the biggest challenge is that usually like once we make the ransom payment, we don't get a decryption key until they actually move funds out. And at the same time, in some cases, we actually make payments on behalf of the clients for the promise of data deletion. So obviously, if eventually we'll find out, okay, like you actually intercepted our transaction or put a freeze on one of the exchanges, like first of all, like if it was done before we got the decryption key, it's bad because we probably will not get it. And at the same time, if you are paying just for the promise so that the data will not be published, obviously they can publish it after that, like once they figure out. But the international community actually gets better and better when it comes to know your customer and anti-money laundering rules. So even like I saw news in Thailand. So like Thailand, for example, they are extremely anti-crypto because the market is unregulated. But even they now established a new program where if you are a tourist, you can sign up for their application where you can transfer money and convert them into local currency, but you still have to go through your like identity verification, your passport submission, and everything else. We just like, at least on the surface, it looks pretty legit. So it's not some random stuff where you can get your cash out from some shady corner, the dark corner, etc. So I think overall community is definitely getting there. But yeah, like as I said, like so the capabilities to actually put freezes on legal exchanges or compliant exchanges are there. But I think the biggest challenge is that clients don't report all the transactions, and in some cases they don't want law enforcement to do anything to like intercept the funds.
Well, what you're saying, just to be clear, is there's now starting to be the possibility that they can start to trace that down and now start to go through that. Now, of course, there's going to have to be relationships with wherever that threat actor is, if they're overseas in the Philippines, the Middle East, right, whatever that may be, for them to trace that down and be able to do anything.
No, the possibility to trace it been on the market for a while, and there are like two main blockchain analytic companies, Chainalysis and TRM Labs, that enable like investigators and analysts to actually trace those transactions and figure out like what's actually happened to them. Again, the challenge is that where those funds are going through, and like if they attach in like a legitimate exchange that has a know your customer AML compliance rules in place, there's a way to freeze that account and potentially do the clawback of those funds back. But obviously, like once they get to Russia and being exchanged at some local like exchange shop, or like there's definitely no way to get it back
Right.
after that.
And that makes sense, right? Like you said, depending how fast they transfer it out, right? No, anything else, like say someone's new to the industry, anything else that someone would need to know about the blockchain analysis that kind of would help them? Because I know this is a conversation mostly I see is around incidents. You don't normally deal with the blockchain from your day-to-day unless you're in kind of cryptocurrency. Most organizations don't really work with cryptocurrency on that level. And it's not really something security guys, other than if you're dealing with an incident, you start to talk about, because now you're talking about ransomware payments, you're gonna have to pay and so forth, right? And a lot of times it's in Bitcoin.
No, I mean, like outside, other than the cryptocurrency, which obviously like we see a lot of use cases, how like Bitcoins, Ethereum, and there's like probably like 300-400 of other cryptocurrency Dodge being created like every other day. Outside of that, the underlying technology is pretty interesting. So like my recommendation for somebody new, like basically start reading up on what blockchain technology is, because like even outside of the cryptocurrency payments, there are a lot of cool capabilities in there. So for example, I think it was Delaware. So Delaware, like in the United States, it's a state like where a lot of companies been incorporated, because I think they don't have like a state tax for the Delaware. So like maybe like 70-80% of companies that were incorporated like around the world were incorporated in Delaware. So they actually try to incentivize use of blockchain technology for tax filings. So like they created a new solution that is based on blockchain, where you can file your corporate taxes. It stays on the blockchain, and like the cool part comes when it comes to audit, because like you cannot alter the blockchain. So like everything stays in the record, everything is sequential, everything is timestamped, and you have like full visibility and traceability. So personally, like, and we kind of we did add quantum computing as one of the topics that we want to talk about. But like once you figure out like how the mining process works, how the blockchain works, quantum computing sends another wrench into the mix, because for example, the algorithm that's being used for Bitcoin mining, quantum computing is definitely can handle it. So potentially, like in theory, not if, but when quantum computing is here, like my personal prediction is that Bitcoin would drop, because if we would have state actors like China, for example, that can dedicate resources to quantum computing for mining Bitcoins, the exchange rate will crash. But there are a couple cryptocurrencies there that have encryption algorithm that is prone to quantum computing. So just word of advice, you can Google them, but that's what I would invest in, and those are not very well known cryptocurrencies right now. But both Bitcoin and Ethereum are prone to quantum computing.
Now, with quantum computing, I mean, you're looking at as it comes out. I mean, I was watching about a year ago, like if I wanted to buy a quantum computer for my home, it was about $5,000. So it's not that expensive.
No. Like if you actually want to get like the real capability, it's extremely
100%.
expensive.
Like you look at the ones like Google and all that they have, right?
Yeah, and that's kind of like when it comes to cryptocurrency, I haven't done the math yet, but I suspect that maybe all the expenses on the power and cooling and everything else may be way more expensive versus like trying to use graphic cards, GPUs to try to mine something. But I don't know yet. But yeah, to test something to see how it works for home, maybe it's not too expensive. But like when you're talking about production investments that Google, Twitter, X making, and China is making, those are billions of dollars.
I mean, they're corporate level quantum computing, right? I know. Remember reading that with Google, organizations could rent time to use the quantum computer, and it was tens of thousands of dollars for like an hour, right? It wasn't cheap.
Absolutely, yeah. It's very expensive, and I mean, like, there are a lot of good causes that quantum computing can be used for, like pharmaceutical, for example, because they can model. Probably getting way too off the subject, but essentially you can use quantum computing to test a potential drug to see how it potentially can interact with proteins in your body to see if it can cure like a specific disease. So like my point is that there's like for the benefit of the world, there's definitely way more interesting and positive causes that quantum computing can be used for.
Makes sense. Now, how, looking at cybersecurity, bringing that quantum computing back, like how accessible do you think that's going to be to threat actors over the next 5 to 10 years?
So we had a discussion with a couple of friends of mine. So like our suspicion that potentially it only will take a few months. And the biggest challenge is the efficiency of decryption. So how quickly encrypted data or encrypted algorithms can be decrypted using the quantum computing. And it's kind of like it actually should be a service line for a lot of incident response companies because and now we're talking about quantum, but like even like the top 5, top 10 recommendations have not been implemented by majority of the companies out there. Like quantum computing, like I would say probably like 98% of companies definitely not ready for. So you basically have to assume, okay, like all your passwords are compromised. What do you do now? All your communications potentially can be intercepted and decrypted in flight. What do you do now? But yeah, like as I said, like at the DEF CON, the main topic was like artificial intelligence, deepfakes. But I think like my prediction that next year it will be quantum computing, like would take over all the discussions on AI. And
well, because I think for myself, kind of thinking this through, when you look at quantum computing, I mean, you can do faster brute forcing, right? The different variations of passwords and password dictionaries, you can go through a lot faster, right? And try to brute force an account. Like you're saying, you know, when you're trying to decrypt or, you know, a solution, 100%, it's a lot faster to be able to go through different variations, right? To be able to decrypt. I think being able to do threat intelligence, right? And reconnaissance of an environment and being able to scan an environment a lot faster, right? The computing power is going to be there, right? To be able to scan multiple, you know, public IP addresses and networks to get, you know, the information. And then my thing is now combining that with AI, how fast you can compute strategies as a threat actor to come up with attack vectors, right? Hey, we did a reconnaissance, we did this, we found this information. What's vulnerable right now in the industry right now with these devices, you know? And then all of a sudden write me, and then you know as well as I do, write me a script that's going to compromise this, right? Or give me access. Again, ChatGPT and all those have buffers, but write me a script that would give me access. And all of a sudden now you're doing this in like minutes, 10, 15, 20 minutes versus on a regular computer, it could be a couple days of reconnaissance and information and going through. Like you can do it a lot faster. That's my thought.
Absolutely. No, absolutely, and that's why yours and my job will never be boring. Because like I personally would not be able to work in a factory doing the same thing over and over again. So like in our industry, we deal with new challenges on a daily basis, and that's why it's fun. But yeah, absolutely agree. So like the biggest threat of quantum computing is ability to brute force decryption algorithms and like decrypt the data, password caches, etc. So that's the biggest issue. So like I'm sure that like all of us seen that metrics. Okay, like this is how many characters you have in password. This is how much time it will take for like the GPUs to crack it. Like when it goes to quantum computing, like the sky is the limit. And yeah, like if you add a layer for like if a smart hacker would use artificial intelligence to write scripts to like do brainstorming on the potential attack vectors on how the quantum computing can be leveraged in there. Like it's definitely dangerous, but fun world for us to live in.
100%. I mean, I think it's sky's the limits right now, and I think for us is it's funny. You always hear in the news, right? Oh, AI is going to take over people's jobs. AI is going to do this. Everyone's going to be out of a job. But I think for us is AI is going to make for us more interesting on the security front, because we always have to think is how can we protect? How can we protect people, process, and technology against these new technologies and solutions? Because I know for me, you look at that CIA triad when you look at cybersecurity, like confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Most companies are looking at availability. Oh my God, it's accessible. You can do it now. It's faster. It's more efficient. Our staff is more efficient because they can do this. I need less staff. So they're looking at that, which is great. On our side is the integrity of the data and the confidentiality and how to secure that, because when they're using these tools, they don't really think that. They think, oh my God, it's so great. A salesperson told me it's going to help us do all these great things, but they don't think about, okay, hold on, where's the data stored? Who's going to have access to that data? What data are you putting into here?
But I kind of agree that AI definitely will take over some of the positions, especially in IT. So like I started my career in application development, and nowadays you can leverage like a lot of different AI models to help you to write the code. You don't need to know the language. You can just like tell it, okay, like I want to do X, Y, Z, and we'll generate a snippet. So like it kind of interesting paradigm, because so the entry level jobs for like programming, coding can be replaced with AI. So and the remaining piece is like subject matter experts, basically that will help to train those AI models to tell, okay, like this code is horrible. Right. Like you need to redo it, and this is how you do it. So like those are more senior guys, like would have to train AI models to make them better. But like for guys that going into the industry and want to start coding first, like it's kind of like a big leap that you can somehow make from learning how to code Python in college course to over being a subject matter expert to train AI models. So it'll be interesting to observe what will happen to the market.
Yo, so true. Now we got a couple minutes left. Organization you work for, Cypher. Guys, if you want to look at the website, I just posted here. It's cypher.com. If you want to connect with Evgeny, I also have his LinkedIn here. If you want to just reach out to him, I'm sure any questions you have, he's open to answer anything. Any last thoughts, Evgeny?
No, thank you very much for having me. And guys, like if you haven't read Traces in the Dark, please buy it and read it. And Brandon and I will figure out how to get it signed by Jared that attended our call as well.
There, that's awesome. Well, Evgeny, thank you so much. This was great. Like I said, I learned a lot. Thank you so much.
Hey, Brandon. Take care. Thank you.
So, I mean, when you guys are looking at this and all the information that we went through, there's so much to cover, right? You're looking at like threat intelligence, you're looking at quantum computing, you're looking at blockchain, you're looking at, what's going on in the world, economics and warfare, and how it's affecting us and our security. I think the biggest thing to look for is be diligent, go through your process, go through your training, go through cybersecurity, evaluate your current security posture, right? Constantly, and we talked about tabletop exercises, doing assessments, going through and tuning it, constantly testing and measuring how your program is doing and modifying. Never get to the point where you set it and forget it, right? Keep going through that. Keep learning about what's, your day in and day out cybersecurity posture and your technology and how it's working. Because I think as the evolution of technology, AI, quantum computers, we're always going to be looking at what can we do better? How can we secure the environment just a little bit more? So that's it for today's Daily Cyber. Don't forget, software's hackable, be connected, vulnerable. I'll see you next Daily Cyber.